Hey guys, it's Dan from Tot Overland and welcome to my garden studio, which doubles up as headquarters for Tor. And today's video is going to be something a little bit different. It's just going to be a bit more of an informal chat and me asking you guys opinions and questions on a few things as well, because I'm genuinely interested. And it all stems around a particular thing I've been thinking about more recently when it comes to driving. And I think a forgotten question for certainly new car manufacturers as well, and that is around driver engagement. And the reason I've been thinking about this recently, and it is something which can be applied across any type of vehicle, but for me, I'm thinking about more from the off-roading sense, so something which you would go and take out on some trails and do a little bit of more gnarly stuff with. It's because on some recent day tours and sort of private days where I take people out in their 4x4s, then I'm just seeing quite often what they bring, which will be something which is a bit more classic. So say let's say a classic Defender, and I'll be showing them how to engage low range, if they have any kind of diff locks to engage, that type of thing. And the question always gets thrown back at me. It's like, well, how does it work in your Disco 4? And at which point I always go, well, I just twizzle a little knob, sort of press a little button to go into low range and basically point and shoot. And in so many ways, that's really quite handy for what I'm doing because it takes away a lot of the thinking that I need to do when I'm driving. But I always come away from that sort of interaction just going, okay, well, it's a little less interesting. The fact that you might be having to wrestle your low range height selector in place is kind of part of the fun. I mean, I guess if you're having to do that all the time, that's going to wear quite thin. I'd also suggest at that point it might be worth looking at to try and fix that if you can. But it's more enjoyable. And then when you're going off-roading as well, and you're particularly in a manual, you're going, well, just hold it in first if you're going up or down a particularly tricky bit, or just immediately put it in third and shoot from there. I mean, yes, there's an element where I can change gears in my Disco 4, but it's not quite the same. There's just something about that feel you get, isn't it, from a manual, where you're sort of just engaging the clutch and then engaging those gears and you're just really feeling what the engine is doing, which you just don't really get in an automatic. And yeah, it just got me thinking, like, what do we actually want from a vehicle? And I'd be interested to know what you think, because there's a fair chance if you're watching this, like me, you really enjoy driving. And like me, you enjoy 4x4s in some way, and hopefully using those out on some rougher terrain than just usual typical roads and tarmac. And what is it that you want from a vehicle? What do you actually rate as more of a priority? Is it that driver engagement, or is it something else? And if it is driver engagement, what does that actually mean? I mean, context is useful there as well, isn't it? Because what are you using the vehicle for? I think if you're using it as more of a toy and as a second or third vehicle, I would argue that driver engagement becomes even more important. So that's probably where you're going to be sort of emphasizing your priorities. But if it's something which is your only vehicle or your daily, then to be honest, in many ways, particularly when you're just doing general driving, you want something which is just easy and pretty painless to get around in. Because if you have watched my first video I did, which is where I was talking about living with my Disco 4, then I did mention in that as a second car, we have got an electric car, which has been a great vehicle for getting us from A to B. And, I'm quite sold on that as a concept. This isn't the space where I'm going to be talking about electric in any kind of detail, but it does mean that I've got experience with living with a new car, new technology, a different kind of sort of compulsion system as well, but also with all of the new nannying technology, so in the name of sort of driver aids. So I know what those are like to live with, quite often infuriating, but also I do understand why they're coming in. And I think for the majority of people, they are seen as more of a plus point than not. But it does mean I've got that reference point there of what it is driving something new. The Disco, which in my eyes, it still feels like quite a modern car. And for these purposes, I'd say it is. It's an automatic. It's got lots of ECUs all over the place, which are figuring out things for you as you drive. And then before that, we've got the more mechanical. So there aren't any kind of driver aids. If you're lucky, you might have ABS, possibly a bit of traction control, but otherwise it's all mechanical. And we're also talking about manuals as well. There's just something about that manual and stick shift, which is just inherently more engaging, isn't it? I do feel like this is certainly an area that modern manufacturers they're not even trying to answer this question anymore. They're so busy fulfilling other criteria and other things which they've kind of got on their list to do with building and designing new cars, that they're not really thinking of the driver engagement. And then it does come down to, what is driver engagement to you? For me, that means something where I am feeling connected with what I'm driving and I'm feeling in the zone. I'm not distracted with something else. I am having to focus, and in a very enjoyable way, of controlling that vehicle that I'm driving. And that's where, I'm just definitely lusting after something which has just got that driver engagement, which the Disco doesn't quite give in the same way. It's an amazing vehicle, really amazing vehicle, and I've got no plans to get rid of it at all, because it's perfect for what I'm doing in terms of Tour Overland and the business side. But I wouldn't mind having a little toy, just something which is able to sort of fulfill that need to just be more engaging and more mechanical. I mean, no, by that token as well, it means it's something which I'm not having to rely on day in, day out. Because if I was having to live with a classic Defender as the daily all the time, and I've gone through periods in my life where I have driven Defenders very regularly, and I've done big European tours in them, so I know all too well what they're like to live with, and you get on with it. But when I directly compare that to my Disco, I know what's more comfortable, and I know which one, when I come out of a sort of 8-hour drive, I feel more refreshed in the Disco. That's fair to say. Also, the Disco in many ways is more practical. So yeah, the Disco's not going anywhere. But if there were an option to have something which was just more of a toy, more of an occasional thing, more like a classic Defender, that would be pretty sweet. I think as well, just that driver engagement side of things. So historically, the cars that I've had a number of convertible cabriolet cars, and they definitely add something to that driver engagement. There's something really quite amazing about being able to take the roof down. Suddenly you're exposed to all the elements and just the sounds and the feel of the wind in a different kind of way that is really engaging. So I mean, that's where you in the back of the room, if you're saying a Defender with a soft top, I mean, that does sound like a perfect mix, doesn't it? Just having something which you can take the roof off, expose yourself to those elements, just more raw, visceral driving experience. I don't know if you've watched one of my recent videos where I met up with a chap called Neil who lives locally to me in his very tidy Defender 90 TDI. And that's got the soft top. And in the summer months, he's got a little bikini top for it. And there's something to be said about that, just having something like that, which that's just pure enjoyment. You're not driving that type of thing because it's the most practical vehicle or most comfortable vehicle to get you around a place, but it's just a huge amount of fun. And fun and driver engagement definitely feels like it's being lost in today's conversation around new cars and that type of thing. Just thinking in terms of some of those new vehicles that I've driven 4x4 wise. So recently we took a wife and husband out in their Ineos Grenadier, showing them how to make the most of that off-road and how the different options work and why they should work how they do. Quite interesting. I had very high hopes of the Grenadier in terms of if I was to imagine a brand new vehicle right now, that's probably the one which would tempt me the most to replace the Disco 4. I'm not in a position to get a Grenadier right now, but if I were to get something, that's probably where I would land. It's new, very capable, very well made, I think very solid in terms of that robustness you want for going off-road. But also, it was a little more engaging compared to the Disco 4 in that you've got the, the sort of the well-known panel of buttons above, so a bit like an aircraft. That's very cool. And it's, this particular one as well, it had specs, it had front, center and rear diff locks as well. Again, really handy. And I thought, wow, this is going to be very capable. What was quite interesting driving that was it perhaps wasn't head and shoulders better than my Disco 4 than I thought it might be. We were both driving the same stretches, and I had a go in, both vehicles in the same bit, and they were pretty comparable in terms of what we're doing. Admittedly, my Disco is a little modified, so that's going to help its cause compared to out of stock. But then when I think of what my Disco is doing, the terrain response system is very, very effective. It's very good. And I've no doubt it is better than a human being is always going to be in a lot of those situations. Where do you land on that argument or, sort of that idea? Do you prefer something which is more mechanical, more real? Or when I say more real, it's down to you, the driver. You haven't got any driver aids or clever technology which are getting in the way. This was unscripted. I've just sort of waffled on a little bit and it's meandered around, I know. But I think it's an interesting thing to be talking about. And like I've said, as I've been talking in this video, I'm interested to hear what you think on this topic. So please comment below. Genuinely interested there. And in the meantime, I'm going to be doing my best to be pushing out some content as regularly as I can. Obviously, it does take a fair amount of time, but it's also something which I've been really enjoying, and it's allowed me to meet and experience some really quite cool things so far, and I'm sure that will just continue. So there we go, guys. Anyway, really appreciate your support, and please like and subscribe if you'd like to watch some further videos. All right, cheers.